76 years. That's the number. The death sentence. The invisible chain they strap you into without so much as a whisper. You, John, me, every damn one of us grinding $1, scraping 10, throwing it into the great, indifferent maw of the market. $10 a day. A pittance. A gesture. Barely enough to keep a barista and artisanal oat milk. But it adds up. It should add up to $2,800 a month in dividends. Freedom. Breathing room. The kind of oxygen that lets you sleep past 3 a.m. without your brain gnawing at the edges of your financial coffin. But if you do what everyone preaches. Shove it into the S&P 500 and pray. You're not getting that oxygen for 76 years. 76 years. That's not a plan. That's a life you won't even live. A lifetime stolen. A grave dug by the slow, inexorable turning of the institutional calendar. I'm not here to coddle you. I'm here to show you the guts of the machine. To crack open the S&P 500, dissect its cold, indifferent heart, and expose why it takes that long. We're going to talk about the dividend snowball. Not some fluffy, feel-good metaphor, but a financial weapon, forged in the fires of patience and focused intent that changes everything. We'll arm John, a ghost of an everyday investor, with a 5-stock portfolio that can reach that $2,800 a month in just 18 years. 58 years faster. Think about that. 58 years of your life given back. And if you have the stomach for it, if you're still breathing by the end of this autopsy, I'll show you a single adjustment, a simple maneuver that cuts that timeline down to 13 years. The fastest way to live off dividends without selling your soul to a yield trap. But before we can escape the 76-year prison, John, the phantom of your future self, needed to confront a brutal truth. A question that cuts to the bone of every financial dream. How much cold hard cash does $2,800 a month actually demand? It all comes down to one goddamn thing. Yield. Yield. It's not just a number on a screen, not a benign percentage point. It's a verdict. It's the raw, visceral measure of how much cash your investments bleed into your account each year, expressed as a percentage of their value. The higher the yield, the less capital you need to chain down in some digital vault just to hit your income goal. It's the engine of your freedom, or the anchor around your neck. To scrape together $2,800 a month in dividend income, to feel that life-giving flow of cash, a 2% yield would demand a king's ransom. We're talking roughly $1.68 million shackled in investments. $1.68 million. Go ahead, stare at that number. Let it burn into your retina. $1.68 million. Sounds like freedom, doesn't it? A millionaire. But for $2,800 a month, that's barely the rent in a decent Cleveland apartment or 2 car payments, or the groceries for a family of 4 who dare to eat something other than ramen. It's a $1 million joke, a grotesque parody of wealth. Now twist that dial. Increase the yield even by a sliver. At 3%, that monstrous capital requirement drops to around $1.2 million. Still a fortune. Still a mountain that stretches beyond most horizons. At 4%, it's about $840,000. A little more palatable, maybe. A little less soul-crushing. And at 5%, closer to $672,000. Same $2,800 a month. Same dream of breathing free. But a completely different mountain to climb. A different beast to tame. You see it, don't you? The power of that single, unassuming percentage. The yield isn't just a metric. It's the fulcrum on which your entire future balances. But let's be brutal for a moment. Let's strip away the pretense. Nobody, and I mean nobody, staring down the barrel of an honest life, has a spare $1 million collecting dust, waiting to sprinkle them with $2,800 a month. Not us. Not the everyday investors who are actually watching this, wondering if there's a way out of the rat race without winning the lottery. If you're gunning for that kind of income, that level of financial oxygen, it's not about having the money. It's about building it. Brick by agonizing brick. Dollar by disciplined dollar. And that's where John, the eternal avatar of our collective struggle, slammed head first into a truth most people willingly overlook. The path to $2,800 a month isn't just about how much you manage to squirrel away. It's about how viciously, how relentlessly, how hard your money works for you while it sits there, accumulating dust and yearning for purpose. It's not enough to save. You have to make those saved dollars breed. You have to turn them into tiny, insatiable financial predators. But there's a second piece to this brutal puzzle. A mechanism that cranks the entire engine into a higher gear, a concept often whispered in hushed tones by the truly patient, but rarely understood in its raw power. It's called dividend reinvestment, or, in the parlance of the street, drip, drip. It sounds harmless, almost poetic. A gentle, continuous flow. But it's a confession. A stark admission that you have nowhere else, nothing better, more pressing, more immediate, to do with the trickle of cash your investments kick off. Instead of snatching those dividends and blowing them on a new gadget and night out, or even just letting them sit fallow in your brokerage account like dead money, you immediately, relentlessly, automatically pump them back into the very shares that birthed them. You force them back to work. Those new shares, they don't just sit there. Oh no, They join the army. They, too, pay dividends. And over time, that cycle, that relentless self-feeding loop, starts to sing. Your money makes more money. And then that money, the offspring of your original dollars, makes even more money. It's not just compounding. It's a financial organism, growing, feeding, multiplying without your direct intervention. It's elegant. It's brutal. And it takes time. Oh God, does it take time? Let's run a simple scenario, a thought experiment. Imagine you've scraped together $10,000, a respectable sum. You chuck it into a stock priced at $50 a share. That buys you 200 shares. A nice round number. The yield on this theoretical beast is 4%. So in that first agonizing year, as you watch the market's endless gyrations, you'd earn $400 in dividends. $400. A drop in the bucket. Barely enough to cover a utility bill. Now, instead of blowing that $400, instead of letting your primate brain shout, instant gratification, you force your hand. You reinvest it. That $400 at $50 a share buys you 8 more shares. You're up to 208 shares. Small. Insignificant even. You haven't added a single red cent of your own money. But then year 2 dawns. Those 208 shares, now a slightly larger army, still humming along at that same 4% yield, kick out $416. $16 increase. Pathetic, isn't it? The kind of gain that makes you question your sanity. The kind of gain that makes you want to chuck it all and YOLO into whatever meme stock is screaming hottest. But you don't. You reinvest again. Another 8 shares, plus a little extra. Now you're sitting on 216 shares. Still no new money from your pocket. Just the machine, grinding. Year 3. Those 216 shares. Now a slightly more formidable unit. They pay you $432. Another $16 bump. Barely enough to justify the mental anguish. But you reinvest again. And now, you're sitting on 225 shares. Each year, the number of shares grows. Each year, dividend payment, that precious life-sustaining oxygen, gets bigger. And each year, that slightly larger dividend payment buys even more shares in the next reinvestment. That, my friend, is the dividend snowball. In year 1, it made you $400. By year 3, it's crawling to $432. It's not a sprint. It's a slog. It's small. Pathetically small at first. But the longer that damn thing rolls, the faster it picks up speed, collecting momentum, grabbing more mass, turning into something unstoppable. The question isn't if it works. It's what you're feeding the snowball. Because John, bless his patient, naive heart, ran that same snowball through the S&P 500. The venerable, the untouchable, the widely worshipped. And the results? They weren't exactly what he or you expected. They were slow, agonizing death by 1,000 paper cuts, the S&P 500. The most popular investment vehicle in the known universe. And for good reason, they say. It's simple. Diversified. Over the long run, it grows. The profits of passive investing swear by it. They tell you to set it and forget it. To trust the process. And they're not entirely wrong. Its average annual price appreciation sits around 12%. Solid. Respectable. The dividend growth rate? Roughly 6% a year. Decent. On paper, it looks bulletproof. The kind of foundation you build a financial empire on. But then there's the catch. The brutal, devastating, soul-crushing catch. The dividend yield. The actual tangible cash it pays you. It averages around 2%. And that, my friend, is being generous. That single, unassuming number, that 2% changes everything. It's the invisible shackle. The weight that keeps you submerged for decades. Let's put John back in the grinder. $10 a day. That's $3,650 a year, diligently, painfully, consistently poured into the S&P 500, every single dividend reinvested. The snowball is rolling, but it's rolling through wet cement after 10 years. A decade. 10 years of your life. 10 years of discipline, of missed coffees, of deferred pleasures. The projections show his portfolio, after a full goddamn decade, growing to about $68,515. The dividend income at that point, barely noticeable. A whisper. A ghost of a promise. It's enough to buy a few extra gallons of gas, maybe. It's not enough to feel. Not enough to matter. You're still a bag holder by boredom, watching paint dry. After 20 years. 2 decades. You've aged. You've seen market crashes, bubbles, political upheavals. Life has happened. The portfolio climbs to roughly $295,484. $250,000. Sounds good, right? A significant chunk of change. But the annual dividends are still only around $2,000. Less than $170 a month. $170. After 20 years of relentless, agonizing discipline. What does $170 a month buy you? A slightly less crappy internet plan? Maybe it's financial hypothermia, a slow, agonizing freeze-out on a $250,000 bed. After 30 years, 3 decades, a generation, John's portfolio finally crosses the $1 million threshold. $1,020,261 to be exact. A millionaire. Congratulations, you did it. But the dividends? A pathetic $3,019 a year. That's $251 a month. $251 from $1 million account. A $1 million account paying $251 a month. The account got rich. John's life didn't change. Not by any meaningful measure. Not by any metric that truly sets you free. And that, my friends, is the brutal, unforgiving problem with the S&P 500 for income. The growth, it's real. The compounding, it absolutely works. But it's all backloaded. Every damn bit of it. The curve stays flat, agonizingly, soul-crushingly flat for decades. And only explodes at the very, very end, by which point John would be 76 years into the journey. That's when the dividends finally crawl, gasping, across the finish line of $2,800 a month, when he's too old, too tired, too close to the grave to truly care. The S&P 500 doesn't fail you. It's not a scam. It's far more insidious than that. It just delivers too late. It outwaits you. It's a passive machine designed to harvest your patience, your youth, your very limited time on this earth for the benefit of generations yet unborn. It doesn't hate you. It doesn't need to. It simply has more time than you do. So John, in his desperate 3 a.m. clarity, started asking a different question, a dangerous question, a question that flies in the face of conventional wisdom. Not what grows the most, not what everyone else is doing, but instead what pays the most the soonest without blowing up, without turning his hard-earned capital into dead money, without chasing a yield trap that crumbles the moment you touch it. That meant looking at stocks differently. Not chasing the highest yield, because that's a sucker's game, a fast track to ruin. Not chasing the highest growth, because that's often speculation, gambling dressed up in fancy clothes. No. It meant finding the brutal, unforgiving balance between both. The tightrope walk between income today and growth tomorrow. The sweet spot where patience meets aggression. In a few minutes, I'm going to lay out the cold, hard logic of how to select the stocks for your goal. Then I'll show you, with unblinking clarity, how a portfolio forged from those very stocks can reach that same $2,800 goal in 18 years, not 76. And finally, for those with the iron will, for those who truly hunger for financial emancipation, I'll show you how to bend that timeline even further to just 13 years. But first, let's build this weapon. Let's construct the portfolio that stares down the S&P 500 and laughs. The first thing John, the ghost of your financial future, drilled into his psyche was yield. Again, the brutal truth of how much a stock pays you each year relative to its price. Too low, like the S&P 500's pathetic 2%, and the income takes forever. An eternity. It's financial purgatory. Too high, like the siren song of a 10% or 12% yield, and it's usually a warning shot across the bow. A red flag waving in a hurricane. Companies splashing out that kind of cash are often bleeding out, drowning in debt, or clinging to life by a thread. Those payouts, they don't typically last. They get slashed. They vanish. And you're left a bag holder watching your principal evaporate. I've been there. Chased that impossible yield, watched it vaporize. The shame still burns. The sweet spot, John learned, the treacherous, narrow path, sits somewhere between 2% and 6%. Enough to provide a meaningful income, but not so much that it screams impending disaster. Second pillar, dividend growth. A payment that stays the same forever is dead money. It's a slow bleed, losing its purchasing power, its potency, its very meaning, as the insidious tendrils of inflation wrap around it, making everything else more expensive. The best companies, the ones that build enduring wealth, raise their dividends. Every single year. Ideally by 10% more. That relentless year-over-year increase, that's what gives the snowball its teeth. That's what accelerates its roll. Without it, you're just pushing a pebble uphill. And the third, often overlooked, but utterly essential, pillar, stability. A high yield means nothing if the company cuts it next year, if the foundation crumbles. John searched for companies with battle-hardened, consistent histories, companies that have weathered storms, those with manageable payout ratios, meaning they're not shelling out more cash than they're bringing in. And critically, enough free cash flow to keep those payments flowing even through the inevitable bad years, the recessions, the market panics, the global uncertainties. He also instinctively knew he couldn't put all his eggs in one basket. Diversification, not just for the sake of it, but to spread across different industries, different sectors. So one localized catastrophe, one bad patch of the economic landscape, didn't gut his entire goddamn plan. With those three filters, yield, dividend growth, and stability, burned into his mind like sacred text, John began picking his weapons. He started with the Schwab U.S. Dividend Equity ETF, SCHD for short. It's not a single stock. No. It's a fortified bunker, a diversified basket of roughly 100 high-quality dividend-paying companies, each one screened for financial strength for consistent payouts. It's the closest thing to a bulletproof vest in this market. The yield? A respectable 3.47%. The 10-year dividend growth rate? A solid 10.43%. And the annual price appreciation? Around 8.6%. Nothing flashy. No moonshots here. But that's the brutal point. SCHD gives John a diversified, stable base. A bedrock. It's already beating the S&P 500 on income right out of the gate. Everything else he adds builds on top of this. It's the quiet professional, the reliable workhorse. Next, John went after yield. Pure, unadulterated cash flow. CubeSmart, a self-storage right. Not sexy, not exciting. It owns and operates storage facilities across the country. Concrete boxes, steel doors. The kind of business that hums along whether the economy is roaring or collapsing. The dividend yield is a fat 5.9%. That's the highest in the portfolio by a wide margin. The dividend growth rate sits at 11.72% annually, which is more than solid. But here's the cold trade-off. The price appreciation? A dismal 0.75% a year. It's almost flat, dead money in terms of capital gains. But John isn't buying CubeSmart to watch the stock price climb. He's buying it for the pure, relentless, unadulterated cash flow. Every quarter, this unassuming, boring stock is spewing more money back into the snowball than anything else in the portfolio. That, and only that, is CubeSmart's job. To feed the beast. The third stock on John's list is Tractor Supply. Again, not a name that grabs headlines. It sells farm equipment, animal feed, rural lifestyle products. It's gritty. It's essential. It serves a customer base that's often overlooked but fiercely loyal. And it's been raising its dividend every single year for over 15 years straight. Over 15 years of consistent, compounding increases. The 10-year growth rate? A stunning 19.24% a year, almost 20%. The yield right now is 2.14%. On its own, 2.14% looks anemic, almost S&P-like. But a dividend that grows at nearly 20% a year, that doubles roughly every 4 years. Think about that. That's the kind of hidden power that transforms a trickle into a torrent. The price appreciation clocks in at 9.64%. A solid, respectable performer. Morgan Stanley takes the fourth spot, a financial giant. Its current yield is 2.53%, not an income stock on the surface, not flashy. But look deeper. The 10-year dividend growth rate is an astonishing 20.66%, over 20% a year. And the price appreciation runs at 19.17% a year. Both numbers are among the highest in the portfolio. This isn't a slow burn. This is a controlled, high-octane growth engine designed to accelerate the snowball's momentum in the critical early years. It's a beast in a suit. And finally, we have Federal Agricultural Mortgage, known by its unassuming ticker, AGM. The smallest name on the list, but arguably the most aggressive. It provides specialized financing for farms and rural infrastructure across the country. Essential. Underrated. The dividend yield is a robust 4.52%. The 10-year dividend growth rate? A blistering 23.48%. The fastest in the entire portfolio. And the annual price appreciation sits at 14.36%. That combination, that brutal, focused alchemy of a solid yield, the fastest dividend growth in the portfolio, and strong appreciation, is what bends the curve early. This is the accelerator pedal. This is the brute force that shaves years off the timeline. Across all 5 holdings, when weighted equally, John's carefully constructed portfolio blends out to a 3.71% dividend yield. A solid improvement over the S&P 500's anemic 2%. But here's the kicker. The average 10-year dividend growth rate for this portfolio is 17.11%. 17.11%. And the average annual price appreciation, 10.5%. It's that 17.11% growth rate, that relentless, self-accelerating, almost violent expansion of payouts, that separates this portfolio from everything the S&P 500, in its vast, indifferent wisdom, can ever hope to do for you. It's the difference between pushing a pebble and triggering an avalanche. So John has his 5 stocks, plan, and that same $10 a day. The question now is simple, brutal, unavoidable. Does the math actually work? Does this carefully constructed machine deliver on its promise? First, John starts simple, the same $10 a day. That's $3,650 a year, religiously, painfully, going into this 5-stock portfolio with every single dividend payment, every single drop of blood reinvested. It's a slow build grind. After the first year, he's got $3,650 in the account. That sets the stage. It's a foundation, a mere whisper of what's to come, but it's there. By year 10, a decade. The projections show the portfolio growing to about $77,851. It's more than the S&P 500 gave him. The dividends are starting to show up, a little less meager, a little more insistent. But they're still small. Still not enough to move the needle on a gas bill. The snowball's rolling, yes, but it's not fast enough to feel yet. It's a quiet hum, not a roar. Then, by year 15, a full 15 years, things begin to shift. The machine starts to hum louder. The portfolio climbs to $208,757. And the dividends? They're picking up real momentum. This is where that 17.11% dividend growth rate, the engine of this contraption, starts doing what it was designed to do. Each year's payout is noticeably, materially bigger than the last. It's like the sound of a distant gathering storm. And then comes year 18 years. The portfolio reaches $381,840. The annual dividend income hits $34,279. Divide that by 12. That is $2,857 a month, right around John's $2,800 target. Freedom, oxygen. In 18 years. Not 76. Let's break down where that total value came from. Let's dissect the beast. About $171,191 of that is capital appreciation. The stock's simply going up in price. Another $144,949, that's reinvested dividends. Money the portfolio itself generated, the offspring of John's initial dollars, and then fed back into its own growth. Together, that's $316,140 in value that John didn't even put in from his own pocket. His initial $3,650 a year for 18 years amounts to $65,700. The snowball built more than he did. It worked harder. It was more efficient. It was brutal. And it was fast. To really see what that means, to feel the visceral impact of this difference, let's put John's dividend portfolio right next to the S&P 500. A stark, unblinking side by side. Same $10 a day. Same starting points. Completely different destination. A tale of two futures. On one side, the S&P 500. That blue line, barely moving for the first 2 decades. After 20 years, the dividends are still under $200 a month. After 30 years, with over $1 million in the account, it's paying a paltry $251 a month. The real growth doesn't show up until the very end of the curve, long after it truly matters, long after you've spent your youth, your energy, your prime. It's an investment strategy for your grandchildren, not for you. John's portfolio, the one we just built, tells a completely different story, a story of acceleration. By year 10, the dividends are already climbing into the thousands annually. Not life-changing, but you can feel it. By year 15, they're over $1,000 a month, a significant chunk of change, enough to make a difference, enough to start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And by year 18, John is collecting $2,857 a month, more than the S&P 500 produces in 76 years of agonizing compounding. Same $10 a day, same discipline, same patience. One path takes a lifetime, a wasted life. The other takes less than 2 decades, 58 years. That's the gap. That's the difference between following the crowd into the financial slaughterhouse and building something intentional, something designed for your life, something that fights for your time. After seeing what a focused $10 a day could accomplish, after feeling the weight of those 58 years lift from his phantom shoulders, John asked himself one more question, a dangerous question, a question that hints at true greed, true impatience. What if he pushed a little harder? What if he poured just a little more fuel into the fire? John, let's imagine, had $15,000 saved up. Not a fortune. Not the kind of generational wealth that makes headlines. But enough. Enough to give the snowball a real violent head start. Instead of starting from absolute zero, he drops that lump sum in on day one, a kickstart. And then he bumps his daily contribution. Not $10, but $30. A real sacrifice. $30 a day. That's $10,950 a year. It hurts. It demands discipline. It carves away at immediate pleasures. But for what? After 1 year. Just one. His portfolio, supercharged by that lump sum and aggressive contributions, was projected to be at $28,082. The snowball is no longer a pebble. It's a rock. By year 10. A decade. The projections show the portfolio reaching $297,085. The dividends are no longer just meaningful, they're substantial. Annual dividends of $16,128. That's over $1,300 a month. Already free cash flow that changes the game. And then comes year 13. 13 years. The portfolio hits $527,495, a $500,000 war chest. The annual dividend income climbs to $34,862. And that, my friends, is $2,905 a month. Well past the $2,800 target in 13 years. Let's dissect this one too. Out of that total value, about $226,945 came from capital appreciation. The underlying stocks doing their work. And $143,200 from reinvested dividends. That's $370,145 in value the portfolio created on its own. John added $15,000 up front and then $10,950 a year for 13 years, totaling $142,350 from his own pocket. Snowball, the machine, nearly tripled his contribution. It was no longer just working, it was roaring. Two things made the difference here. The lump sum. It gave the snowball a bigger starting mass, a denser core. More shares from day one meant more dividends from day one. An instant brutal acceleration. And the higher daily contribution. It kept feeding the beast faster. More fuel. More velocity. Same stocks. Same strategy. Same cold, brutal mechanics. Just more aggression. More intent. When you line all three paths up side by side, the gap is not just hard to ignore, it's a chasm. It's a canyon that screams the difference between intention and indifference. The S&P 500 takes 76 years. A death sentence. John's focused portfolio with $10 a day gets there in 18 years. 58 years of your life given back. And with a $15,000 head start and a relentless $30 a day, it's 13 years. 13 years. That's 63 years faster than the S&P 500. Same goal. Three completely different timelines. Three completely different lives. The snowball doesn't care how much you start with. It doesn't judge your bank account, your past mistakes, or your current struggles. It just cares that you start, that you feed it, and that you have the iron will, the brutal patience, to let it roll. Now look, you've seen the numbers. You've felt the grind. You've witnessed the brutal efficiency of a focused strategy. The only question left is, will you be here? Will you be the one who sees it through for 18 years? Or will the next shiny object, the next screaming meme, the next promise of instant riches, pull you off course by year 3, leaving you a bag holder by boredom, a ghost of your financial potential? 76 years, 18 years, 13 years. The choice is yours. Prove it or don't.